All right, so now we have already implemented the login view model. Let's go ahead and see that how we can use it. So if you open up the login page.dart file, you will find this login function. Inside this login function, we are already getting the email and the password, but we are not really doing anything with it. So this is a good opportunity to use the login view model to call the login function, pass in the email and password, and get authenticated. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use the login view model. And I will simply say login view model. Once again, since we are using the provider pattern, which is change notifier, we can get access to the instance, to the object of login view model if we simply ask the provider. So I can do that right over here in my build function. Just like what we did when we were using the registration view model. So there we go. We're simply saying provider of login view model, provided the context, give me the instance. And make sure that you are adding the appropriate provider.dart file, so you're importing that. And now you can see it is actually imported somewhere on the top, right there. Let's go ahead and do a hard reset by clicking the refresh button and trying to go back to the login page. Okay, great. So we can see the login page. Now we can go ahead and use the login view model. Once again, we are inside the login function. And over here, we can say login view model dot login, passing in the email and passing in the password. Now this is a asynchronous function. It is going to return you a future. So I'm just going to go ahead and say wait for it. And when you are logged in, so if logged in, we'll get the value in is logged in. If is logged in is true, meaning if the person is actually logged in, then what we want to do is we want to dismiss the modal, because remember, this login view that you see on the right hand side is actually part of a modal. So we can simply go ahead and say navigator.pop, and we will pop the context and we will pass in the true value. All right, so let's go ahead and try to log in using one of our users. So I'm going to go to the login page. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try out something different. So I'm going to try to use a user which doesn't really exist. So whatever the password, it doesn't really matter. This particular user doesn't really exist. And if I do login, it says user not found. All right. So all of this error that you see over here, user not found, is actually coming from the login view model. And we can check over here that if e.code is equals to user not found, then we can set a different message. We can say kind of like user is not registered. And then we can remove that part. There we go. All right. Let's go ahead and do it again. And again, we're going to go and we're going to try to log in using a user that doesn't really exist. So it doesn't really matter what I type over here because this particular user doesn't exist. And I can go ahead and add something over here. And user is not registered. Much nicer, right? Okay, now let's go ahead and try to log in as a user which actually does exist. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in adamsharp@gmail.com. And my password is password123. And I'm going to say login. And when I say login, it logs me in and then it pops out the login view or login page. So we're back to kind of like the home page, which is the incident list screen. Now, one of the things that I should mention over here is that I have experience that even though sometimes, even though when you create a user with a username and a password, which is email and a password, and you put in your correct email and your correct password, it still sometimes says wrong password. I don't really know what that problem is. I think it is associated, maybe there's a bug in Firebase or something weird is going on because it says that well, the password is wrong. And the workaround that I had to do for showing you that how this works is I had to go over here into authentication, and then I had to say reset password. When I say reset password, it sends me an email to this particular address, and then I can change my password again to password123, and then it works. But I haven't really found a solution as why, even though I put in a correct email and a correct password, it will still say wrong password. Not sure. Maybe there is something wrong with the registration part or creating the registration using email and password. But the solution for that is that if you reset password, then it will work. Maybe it will not happen on your machine. If it does, then try to submit a ticket to the Firebase team, and they will be able to help you out. Okay, so there are a couple of different things that we still need to do. You can see that if I go and register a new user, all right, so watch carefully. What happens if I try to register Mary Doe? And password again, I'm just going to say password 123. Now what I want to do is I want to register the user, and then once the registration is complete, after that I want to take them to the login screen so that they can log in. So what happens is that the user does get registered, but we are not on the login screen. I don't see any login modal popping up. So that's the first thing we need to do. The other thing that I mentioned earlier on is that currently all of our routes, which is navigate to login page, navigate to incidents, navigate to add incident page, and navigate to registration page, all of these routes are currently inside incident list page. This means that if I somewhere else, if I want to do that, if I want to navigate to the login page or registration page, I cannot do that unless I import incident list page into another page, which is not recommended. And that is the same problem that we're facing right now. If you go to the register page, after we have registered, which is after we are 100% sure that we have registered, we pop this out, right? But what we also want to do is we want to take the user to the login page. So what we will end up doing is that we will end up creating an app navigator that will allow us to perform these kind of routing. So in the next lecture, we are going to be refactoring. We're going to create app navigator so that we can navigate correctly. So let's go ahead and see how we can accomplish that in the next lecture.